That woman with the glasses is Liberal Iqra Khalid. It's hard to tell if she's happy or just relieved that her motion passed. Here is what it's all about. The key part of Khalid's motion calls on the government to, quote, condemn Islamophobia and all forms of systemic racism and religious discrimination, and have the Heritage Committee develop an approach to stopping it.
New details now about that terror north of the border.
A fatal shooting at a mosque in Quebec City.
Conservatives, particularly many of their leadership candidates, argued the non-binding motion could stifle free speech and that Islamophobia wasn't defined. The Liberals lined up behind Khalid's motion and refused to support a conservative motion that condemned prejudice against all religions.
Why is this important? The ability to criticize the religious teachings and practices of a faith is a cornerstone of our democracy and our pluralism. Moreover, the ability to question and speak against the edicts of religious leaders allows us to combat hate and oppression. This is why I will be voting against M103 and supporting the motion before us today. If we in Canada claim to have any moral fiber embedded in our foreign policy, we must speak against these laws because they lead to gross human rights violations. No study, law, or government will ever abdicate us from our individual responsibility to uphold the principles that maintain our free society through our own individual actions.
A columnist sparking outrage saying that it should be illegal to be a stay-at-home mom. Sarah Leigh Marquand writes for the Daily Telegraph in Australia and says, quote, rather than wail about the supposed liberation in a woman's right to choose to shun paid employment, we should make it a legal requirement that all parents of children of school age or older are gainfully employed.
So wouldn't it be great if it is illegal and women have to return to work and
why would
the community has to step up?
Why would you want the state to make that kind of decision?
They should
that they would take away our liberty. They would take away our liberty and force us to become whatever the state wants, and they would raise our children. Some of us have values and principles that we want to infuse in our children. We don't want the state or strangers teaching our children.
I understand.
Give them freedom. This is America.
What you do and where you go on the internet is about to become even less private.
And Trump is expected to sign a bill that would allow internet companies to sell your online browsing data.
This is a bad step down a dark path.
Which allows your online information to be stored and sold by broadband internet service providers like AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon without your consent.
Some of the information internet service provider sites are collecting from you.
Your browsing history, online shopping habits, even apps and GPS history on your cell phone can now be up for sale.
What's so upsetting about this is there isn't a whole lot that consumers can do.
It's all there, from your Google searches to video chats and even to smart products that connect to the internet.
I have a simple question. What the heck are you thinking? What is in your mind? Why would you want to give out any of your personal information to a faceless corporation for the sole purpose of them selling it? Give me one good reason why Comcast should know what my mother's medical problems are. You know how they'd know? Because when I went to the doctor with her and they told me what it was, I had no clue what they were talking about. I came home and I searched it on the net. And I searched the drugs that she was taking. The same with my children. Just last week, I bought underwear on the internet. Why should you know what size I take? Or the color? Or any of that information?
We're just afraid that ISPs are going to turn the creepiness up to 11.
My phone number, my social security number, my credit card number, my passwords, everything is mine. And yet, you just want to give it away.
Companies like Google and Facebook already save and sell user information.
We're talking medical information. We're talking passwords. We're talking financial information. We're talking college applications. There is nothing in today's society that every one of us doesn't do every day on the internet, and yet Comcast is going to get it.
You can always opt out by contacting the internet service provider and saying you don't want your data to be sold.
But we should note there is currently no law requiring ISPs to allow you to opt out. The decision is up to each individual company. And Scott, these businesses know your digital footprint is worth billions of dollars to marketing and ad agencies.
These companies are not going broke. That's not the situation. The internet is not in jeopardy. This is plain and simple. And I don't get this. When I was growing up, I thought one of the tenets of the Republican Party that I admired the most was privacy.
To be very frank, this is the most complex and the most violent conflict in our times.
Under the cover of darkness, dozens of U.S. Tomahawk cruise missiles fired into Syria from 2 Navy warships in the Mediterranean.
Overnight, North Korea launched another ballistic missile into the Sea of Japan.
This week's mid-range missile test, a sign of Pyongyang's growing strategic prowess.
The world we live in right now seems frankly paralyzed in the face of the hell in Syria.
Has drawn in many world powers, including Iran and Russia.
With North Korea's unsettling ambitions and rhetoric rising, demand for these intelligence missions is high.
It's a constant tempo. We're very busy all the time. In the last 10 years, we've been the busiest we've ever been in this airplane.
No regional, no global power has the strength to solve it alone. We see many that have the attempt to worsen it by the day. This will only make the situation worse, not only for the Syrians, but also for the rest of the world.
But in addition to that, we're in this unique situation of environmental crisis that is astounding.
We stand at a critical point in our history. Already at the beginning of the year, we are facing the largest humanitarian crisis since the creation of the United Nations.
A famine declaration by the World Food Program is very rare, and yet it's happened here.
Now, the humanitarian crisis in South Sudan is escalating.
A growing famine and ongoing conflicts in African countries are prompting the United Nations to warn that the world is facing the biggest humanitarian crisis since the end of World War II. 20 million people in the region.
9 inches of rain sparked flash flooding in Alexandria, Louisiana, nearly shattering a 70-year record.
This heavy hailstorm in Alabama forcing everyone indoors.
This is creepy. I have never seen this in the 11 years we've lived here.
The big risk is that our generation is the last one that can address absolutely pivotal environmental threats on the planet. And we're the last ones that can do it because we're so close to dangerous thresholds that if we waste another generation, we will no longer be able to avoid a lot of calamities. And so we're the last ones on that threshold.
Peru is facing the most serious floods in the last 20 years.
The streets of Mocoa, Colombia were consumed by a wall of water late Friday night.
Heavy rain triggered the overflow of 3 rivers.
The deluge was well out of the norm. Macoa received the equivalent of 40% of its average monthly rainfall in just one night.
Severe flooding continues in Argentina and Ecuador, with both countries having experienced continuous heavy rainfall for 10 days.
Evacuate the grounds. At the Masters Golf Tournament in Augusta, the severe weather caused the cancellation of Wednesday's par 3 contest for the first time ever.
And it was just devastating. I had never seen nothing like this before.
Pope Francis is welcoming Prince Charles and Camilla to a private meeting at the Vatican today. The visit is part of their 9-day tour.
So I think focusing on what they had in common, focusing on peace.
We want to show you some extraordinary pictures which came to us from the Vatican.
And you can see, I'm not making this up. It comes, you might say, right out of the Pope's own mouth.
La mayor parte de los habitantes del planeta se declaran creyentes. Esto debería provocar un diálogo entre las religiones.
Within hours of Pope Benedict announcing that he was to resign, take a look at this. Lightning struck St. Peter's Basilica.
En esta multitud, en este abanico de religiones, hay una sola certeza que tenemos para todos. Todos somos hijos de Dios.
So when you ask what are we going to do about it, there really is the potential to cooperate. And how do you cooperate in a big, complicated world? Actually, it's interesting. There's no leader right now in the world. You know, there are more or less important people, President Xi Jinping or Donald Trump, of course, important, but they're not leading. There are wonderful people like my boss at the UN, Secretary General Antonio Guterres, but the UN Secretary General, he's got a unique institutional role, but he doesn't lead the world in any sense. He's not a conductor of the world orchestra. So there is no leader.
NAU professor receiving death threats after a story about an essay that she assigned her class made national headlines.
On a recent paper, she had a point deducted from her score because she used the word, brace yourselves now, mankind, to describe humanity.
The term deemed sexist by the university's style guide.
On the list of words to avoid, the word mankind, asking students to use the more inclusive humankind instead.
Her professor, Ann Scott, warned her that this was inappropriate gendered language. Contrary to how the word has been used by almost everybody for centuries, Scott said mankind referred only to men and was therefore sexist.
Hull University is to penalize students by
On the other hand, it can lead to, I think, blur and confusion.
Language itself, which is symbolic, isn't it?
Oh, it is. It's a way in which we turn feelings and ideas into communicable forms. That's fair enough. We don't want to offend anyone. But on the other hand, you can see that you're sort of sucking the juice out of language.
Just finally, if I may, a very simple question. Are we, right now, as we go about our daily lives at the start of 2017, witnessing the first days of a new world order? That dramatic statement. Is that right?
We're in the middle of really profound change, no question about it.
I started thinking about how things have changed in 40 years. When I was in college, nobody would have dreamed that we were all going to be taking photographs with one of these instead of one of these.
No baristas anymore, because that'll also be robots, but they will know from your iris scan that you want a
double, triple caramel.
It also has a new virtual assistant called Bixby and an iris scanner that lets users unlock their phones by looking at them.
DNA is a valuable investigative tool. Fingerprints are a valuable investigative lead and tool. But what scares me is the FBI and the Department of Justice proactively trying to collect everybody's face. And then having a system with a network of cameras where if you go out in public, that too can be collected. And then used in the wrong hands, nefarious hands, somebody in government misusing it. It does scare me. Are you aware of any other country that does this?
We are seeing them more and more, drones watching down from the sky and with few regulations.
More like a toned-down version of what has become common in 21st century warfare, remotely controlled flying weaponry that kills.
I am not a person who will give up privacy for safety.
Not when the tool to enforce safety brings so many questions of its own.
Connecticut state legislature is considering a bill to put a lethal airborne option in the hands of police. The proposal's sudden appearance has sent a shockwave through the state capitol.
I didn't even know this bill was in existence.
The Center for Medical Progress did the American people an incredible service by surreptitiously recording Planned Parenthood selling human body parts to the highest bidder.
Is there any standard procedure for verifying signs of life?
Well, the thing is,
that doesn't go in a chart.
I mean, the key is you need to pay attention to who's in the room, right?
The release comes as its founder, David Daleiden, faces more than a dozen new felony charges in California.
The California Attorney General has charged David Daleiden and Sandra Merritt.
So instead of prosecuting Planned Parenthood for crimes against humanity, California is attempting to shoot the messenger by suggesting that these citizen journalists have no First Amendment rights. It's astounding, truly astounding.
In this clip, Dr. Taylor describes the force needed when performing a DIG, a method of abortion that involves injecting a fetus with the drug digoxin.
I have to tell you anecdotally, my biceps appreciate when the DIG works.
Really? It's in the biceps when you're doing a T&E.
It does not take me any longer to...
And killing them, it is catastrophic. This is the big picture. This is part of the collapse of a civil society here.
We've got craziness in North Korea. We've got the Chinese sort of on the march in the South China Sea. The Russians are on the march all the time. We have these atrocities in Syria, and yet we seem to be now accommodating ourselves to the regime that just committed the atrocity. And of course, we have Iran extending its influence all throughout the Middle East. The world is on fire.
In the worst attack on Christians in decades.
Those talks come amid new tensions with Russia over U.S. strikes on Syria.
Just as military convoys have begun to mobilize, the country of Egypt is in shock and high alert.
Now, staying in the United States, a teacher and one of her students has been shot to death.
A community suffering another tragedy. Deadly violence in San Bernardino is the highest it's been in more than 15 years. And the city is still reeling from the terrorist attack a little over a year ago.
Daesh has claimed responsibility for both attacks after recently threatening to increase violence against Christians.
Egypt's president has declared a state of emergency.
And in Oslo, Norway this morning, after a police robot was brought in to detonate a possible terror bomb, authorities are trying to determine if there is an ISIS connection.
Unfortunately, persecuted Christians don't have many champions in the West. We don't often hear of Hollywood stars talking about Christians being massacred while they're accepting their awards.
The most persecuted group in our world today are Christians.
In fact, many of the elite readily join in the mockery and the disdain shown to Christians. These are very sad realities, but they must be faced and they must be called out.
As you and I have just highlighted, there's another attack against Christians around the world seemingly every day.
And yet what happened in Egypt was unbelievably significant. You know, if you look at what ISIS really stands for, what they are carrying out now in the Middle East and in Egypt in particular, is a kind of genocidal attack on Christians and Christianity. They want Christianity eradicated, and they want to convert all Muslims to their crusade. They want it to be a holy war, and they want Christians gone. And I don't think that narrative is getting the attention it should get in the American media, and I have to say in other media as well around the world.
I suppose I'm someone that just doesn't understand how you could just be able to ignore such atrocities. And yet
they do, and that's what I'm trying to struggle to understand.
Now, I think this is a huge story. This is the kind of story that ought to be dominating cable news in America. It should be dominating headlines around the world. The press in America should be full of headlines about this. This narrative, to me, is very straightforward. ISIS have declared war on Christianity. I'm not seeing that being covered enough.
No.
You have a look, Syrian Christians in Iraq have gone from 1.5 million just 14 years ago, the fall of Saddam Hussein, 1.5 million to just 200,000.
Yeah.
This is astonishing.
The rise of Christian persecution around the world is unprecedented.
It's one of the most sweeping changes in all of our modern times to our everyday lives.
They're the self-portrait of the so-called millennial generation.
It's also allowed us to celebrate ourselves through boastful tweets, humble brags.
A byproduct of social media and a self-absorbed society.
They all be contributing to a generation of self-absorbed, self-promoting, self-involved oversharers.
And apparently these self-obsessed celebrities, selfie-obsessed celebrities, like maybe somebody with the last name of Kardashian.
Maybe.
Yeah, they don't quite help this phenomenon.
What is history going to say about this generation?
I don't know.
They're going to join in or go, what the?
Hopefully they go, what the?
Honestly, it's really something.
I meet a lot of good people, but I believe there's a lot of good people out there, but for the most part, most people, all they care about is themselves. You could be standing there on the corner bleeding and people just drive by you. And they wouldn't want no part of it. They wouldn't want no part of the drama. So there'd be 1 in 10 that might stop and help. You know?
Because there's one generation in human history and natural history that is very unique from every other generation. One time frame.
I walked up to a woman once to ask her what time it was. I was pushing a cart. Me and my wife were pushing our cart. We had all our stuff in a grocery cart. And I was pushing. I needed to know what time it was, so I went up to ask this woman what time it was. She's like, "Oh, get away from me! I don't have any money. Leave me alone." I'm like, "I don't want him." She's like, "Just get away from me. Go." I'm like, and I'm thinking, what could have this woman been through that she's so terrified of a stranger that she? What if my wife was pregnant, her water just broke, and I needed help? I mean, who knows?
Again, my point of worry is a grey area where the border lies in getting preoccupied with it. Okay. To the point of obsession. Okay.
She didn't care. Just get away from me. Go. I don't got no money. She thought all I wanted was her money. I just want to know what time it was. And it hurt, man. It's like people.
It does hurt.
You know, it's like it's humanity. So many people. What have they been through that makes them so terrified of relationships and people that they just don't want nothing to do with nobody? It's sad.
Let's face it. The viral selfie phenomenon will grow along with our need to share our experiences with others. It will continue to be a part of our digital and evolving society.
I feel that way about you too, man. You matter. I mean, you care. It's
matter.
sad to see that most people don't. Check this out. I've got over 240 some friends on Facebook. Most of them I knew from high school. I mean, I knew a lot of people. I got around, all right? 240 some people I know on Facebook. Most of them I thought were good friends from high school. Christmas Day, I Facebooked them all, and I'm like, hey, it's Christmas. I haven't talked to some of y'all in over 20 years. Here's my number. Call me. Let's have a conversation. Nobody. And I posted that thing over and over Christmas Day. Nobody.
So much so, some plastic surgeons say selfies are actually boosting their business.
I see a lot more people coming to my office, and the answer to the question, what bothers you and why did you decide to come and see me, surprisingly enough, is I saw a selfie of myself and I hated it and I have to fix it.
People like 23-year-old model Candace Worcester, says plastic surgeon Nicholas Nikolov. He's currently consulting with her because she says she hates the shadows under her eyes in her selfies.
What we see as a trend is people getting into the microcosm of their looks now. A small little wrinkle here and there, I think I'm bad looking.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
It means people don't want relationships no more. They're so into their internet and so into their Facebook. They got their this is their idol. Internet's become an idol, man. It's like.
My greatest problem with all of this stems from a whole different area.
Right.
This is the world we live in.
People don't want conversations. They don't want nothing no more. I don't know what they want. But this world sucks, man. The way that people see it. Really?
But not every world leader is on board with the constant snapping of pictures. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu recently went on a rant when apparently his picture was taken as he waited for a TV interview. Quote, "What do you get out of all these pictures?" he asked in a video posted on YouTube. "I don't understand this new world."
3 murder victims in Fresno, California today were also chosen at random.
Muhammad surrendered to police, yelling "God is good" in Arabic.
He yelled out Ali Akbar as he was seated in the backseat of the patrol car,
shaking the city of Fresno to its core.
Too much things are going on in this city, not only this, around the whole world, all this violence.
As the area is secured, Parisians, many now accustomed to these emergencies, ordered to keep their...
Police and troops are on alert all over France after another act of terror in Paris. A gunman who was allegedly known as a threat to police.
A Parisian landmark turned into a crime scene. The Champs-Élysées is one of the busiest parts of town.
What can you say? It just never ends.
Just 2 days ago, 2 men were arrested in Marseille, France, suspected of planning an attack to disrupt the election.
The showdown with North Korea. The rogue state is turning up the temperature yet again.
The young leader of an impoverished nation has an appetite for grandiose propaganda.
South Korea has come so far, is so dramatically stronger, better, more prosperous, freer. You'd hate to see anything happen that would disrupt that development. So I think this is a very serious time.
Venezuela is at a breaking point.
thousands taking to the streets yet again today after weeks of violent protests in the capital city of Caracas.
As a cloud of uncertainty hangs over the future of the South American country.
There were other 5 victims. So again, it seems like not only is the sort of tension escalating.
The world, it seems, is quickly moving toward a point of no return.
Some of the worst fighting to grip Libya has played out in recent months as seesaw battles rage between rival militia and the military.
In what world do people think it's okay for teachers to discuss transgenderism with a bunch of 5-year-olds? Maybe, just maybe, they ought to stick to teaching the kids how to read and write instead of deconstructing their God-given gender identity. And whatever happened to reading an old-fashioned nursery rhyme? You know, back when I was in school, Jack and Jill went up the hill, but today, when Jack came down, he was wearing Jill's dress and going by the name Jackie.
Well, they are calling it the worst thing any contestant has ever done in 34 seasons of their reality show Survivor. Fans around the world are outraged over the tactics of contestant Jeff Varner during a tribal council when he outed fellow contestant Zeke Smith as transgender.
Thanks for having me.
This is one of the most profound changes, I think, in the history of the West, the redefinition of sex from a biological reality to a social construct, and it's had a lot of implications.
But starting at the end of the month, some women's, men's, and even gender-neutral restrooms at UW-Madison will have free tampons. And the students I talked to tonight didn't even flinch when I asked them about putting these in men's restrooms.
Is the idea that sex is purely a social construct and not a biological reality, is that rooted in science?
No, this is what was really stunning to me, was to see how, we have science thrown in our faces all day long. And, your sex is literally established from the moment of conception. That is a very basic biological medical reality. And if you read, say, medical textbooks, they're going to talk about your sex in very plain scientific terms. And society is going in a completely different direction.
It's not for nothing that Webster's officially added the word selfie to the dictionary this year.
Why? Perhaps because narcissism has become completely intertwined with the fabric of our society.
Oxford estimates use of the word in the past year has increased 17,000%.
The crazy thing about this list is many of these things we read, and nowadays we just kind of shrug our shoulders at it.
The current version of the DSM defines narcissism as intense self-absorption and a grandiose sense of self.
Sounds familiar.
How about this? How about this? I go over there, punch him in the head, and come right back.
Carrie, no!
Like Tom Cruise and other celebrity Scientologists, Remini vocally supported the church to a religion that demanded much of your time, your money, and your mind.
It is our responsibility to be Scientologists, no matter where we live or work, no matter our resources or excuses.
Well, what you would be told is that you're working to be your better self in all areas of your life.
What appears to be an attack on French police.
So, clearly, the global in-tray is very disruptive. It is creating uncertainty. It is also signaling a degree of complexity that in some ways is unprecedented. And if you just take the most brutal news item of the last week, that we have the United Nations declaring 4 concurrent droughts. First of all, there hasn't been one declared in over 20 years, and now we have 4 concurrent droughts.
County deputy is recovering after being shot in the line of duty by a man investigators say had just murdered a woman. That man is now behind bars after some bizarre behavior and an unusual turn of events.
Kim, that man showed up at the police station with blood on his hands, saying he was Jesus, his dad was God, and he had to chop a woman's head off with an axe. When police questioned him, he started ranting about being Jesus, telling officers his dad was God and that he fought with Satan.
Venha a nós o vosso reino. Seja feita. E conosco cada dia nos dar hoje. Perdoa as nossas ofensas, assim nós perdoamos nossos pecadores. Não nos deixei cair em tentação, mas livrai do mal. Amém. Você não é poderoso. Você não é poderoso. Jesus, Deus está aqui. Deus é maior do que tudo. Você não é poderoso. Deus é maior. Jesus Cristo está aqui.
Conheço a Bíblia melhor do que você. Você não tem conta, você é corrupto. Você não precisa da sua guarda. Jamais.
Você é do mal.
Verdade.
Você não é.
Você é sai. Isso.
Sai.
Qual o santo que tá aí? Qual o santo que tá aí? Fala aí. Lúcifer.
Someone called 911 to report a man acting crazy at a Valero gas station.
Police brutality! I am God! I am God!
In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Fire!
תקשיב טוב, אתה דופק אותי.
תעצור או שאני אדרע לך טייזר! תעצור או שאני יורד! רק את מה שיש לך ביד!
תוריד את... תוריד את הבזנ"ט!
תוריד את זה!
תוריד את הבזנ"ט!
גלופ!
תקלו הצידה שלהם.
תיזהר שם! גלופ! תחכו משם! תחכו משם!
חכה רגע, תן לו להוריד את זה.
גלופת! גלופת!
חכה, יש את הפנים עם הבזנ"ט, חבר'ה. חכו. דוד, זה רחוק? קרב ותן לו.
דופי קורא שוטי!
תן לו, יופי, יאללה. יופי.